Player one day wakes up inheriting their MMORPG character. Trapped, he experiments with his situation. Beginning the series, we see our protagonist enter his in-game throne room. Having a long day, he rested his eyes only to awake later in the same position before drifting off. The only difference is that the surrounding room and environment feels too real. Our protagonist, Lord Momonga, inspects a nearby NPC and notices her mouth to be moving naturally. Testing, a possible theory begins to delegate orders to servants of his domain, Nazarick. Giving his butler, Sebas, the order to begin surveying the Aunfiriati side of his domain, Sebas affirmably accepts the order. Repeating this on a maid, Cletus, simply yielded a similar response. Asking the nearby NPC, Albedo, to allow him to touch her, she graciously accepts. Noting that Albedo reacts like a living creature, he adds that she has a pulse. Pushing the limits, he grabs her breast, stating that such an action to be doable shows that everything may not be a dream. With enough flirting, Momonga orders Albedo to gather floor guardians housing his domain for him to officially greet. Traveling to an arena using an item, he questions whether other guardians of his domain are as loyal as Albedo. Stumbling upon dark elf twins, Aura and Mare, he catches their attempt with the staff he is currently wielding. Using this opportunity, he both attempts to impress the dark elf twins and determine his magic capabilities. Just as if he was playing the game, he cast a fire summon spell, which in turn creates such a powerful creature. Attempting to gauge the strength of his creation and the twins' power, he has the summon fight the twins. As expected, Momonga summonses that the twin elf guardians are far superior than his summon, being able to run circles around it. Praising the twins' abilities, additional NPCs begin gathering at the arena. Introducing the following NPCs: Shaltir Bloodfallen, a vampire meant to guard the first, second and third floor of his domain. Cocytus, a metal beetle which is guardian of the fifth floor. Reintroducing themselves, the Dark Elves Aura and Mare Bello Fiori, guardian of the sixth floor. Demiurge, a demon, guardian of the seventh floor. Finally, the leader of the guardians, the succubus Albedo. After their introductions, they all pledge complete loyalty to our protagonist. As Shaltir, the vampire, approaches Momonga, she begins to flirt with him only for Aura to jealousy point out her fake breast. Beginning to bicker, our protagonist is forced to stop them emitting his aura. Upon learning his domain is nested in grassland, he determines it would be best to camouflage his domain, covering it in dirt and having it blend in with artificially created hills. Heading off, he designates Mare with the task. Once our protagonist leaves the guardians to begin to depart, with each of them remarking Momonga as such a scary yet prestigious leader, Albedo and Shaltir begin insulting each other, stating how much pleasure our protagonist brings them. Cutting to Momonga, we see his inability to wield a weapon as he is a spellcaster. Only after creating his own armor is he able to wield a weapon. With his new disguise, he begins exploring the floors, stumbling upon Demiurge and his underlings. He is instantly recognized. Refusing to allow Momonga to leave his domain alone, Demiurge accompanies him. Taking flight, Momonga soars high into the night sky only to be followed by Demiurge sprouting his demon wings. Taking in such a glorious view, he states that he will make it his goal to conquer this world. Visiting Mare hard at work, he gifts her with a ring, allowing her to teleport just like him across the entire domain and to most floors. All of a sudden, Albedo interrupts their moment. Using this opportunity, Momonga gifts her with a ring, adding that he will prepare one for Demiurge as well. We cut to several knights inspecting a destroyed village, questioning who could have done this, only to cut back to our protagonist using a mirror to watch over another village being raided by different knights. Reminiscing on a past memory whilst playing the game with a friend, he is inspired to investigate the reason for the current village to be raided. Opening a portal, he easily dispatches 2 attackers, saving villagers. Whilst converting one of the attackers' corpses to a loyal Death Knight and having it protect other villagers, Albedo arrives through the portal, apologizing for her late arrival. In shock, the saved villagers mistake Momonga's actions as a threat, only to be reassured that the item he's offering is medicine for their wounds. Casting a barrier and gifting them an item that summons goblins to protect them, Momonga declares that his name henceforth should be Ainz Ooal Gown. Cutting to the Death Knight, we see it easily slaying most of the attackers, only for it to halt actions upon Ainz and Albedo's arrival. Scaring off the remaining attackers, the villagers ask to chat with Ainz. Concealing his true identity, Ainz is able to learn about bordering countries and political turmoil occurring at the moment. Having learned of a possible guild in this world, Ainz attends a funeral for the fallen villagers, noting that he is able to easily bring back the dead, but that would simply disrupt the preconceptions of the villagers. Being alerted to approaching knights on horses, Ainz greets their leader Gaze of Stronov, the chief royal warrior, the king's most trusted knight. Thanking Ainz for saving the villagers, Stronov is informed of unknown figures surrounding the current village slowly approaching. Moving into a nearby hut to chat, Stronov informs Ainz that the attackers are most likely attempting to get rid of Stronov along with the villagers. Asking for Ainz's help, Stronov is declined, only asking Ainz to at least continue to protect the villagers when he's off. As a parting gift, Ainz gifts Stronov a totem. Admiring Stronov's willpower, Ainz watches as Stronov and his men begin charging at the right of enemies, encasing the villagers in them. Wielding a sword, Stronov begins chipping away at airborne creatures, only to be outnumbered when summoners begin creating these airborne creatures known as angels. Crying to not be underestimated, Stronov claims that even upon his death a far powerful person would be able to protect the village. All of a sudden he is teleported to a hut in the village, being told this was Ainz's doing. He notices the gifted totem disintegrate in his pocket. Switching to Ainz's POV, we see him introduce himself, asking for the enemy to submit to him if they want a painless death. Laughing at Ainz, the attackers have two angles impale Ainz, only to be baffled when Ainz is able to easily smash both angles, one in each hand, into the ground, removing their existence. Fearing the worst, the enemy sorcerer orders all the angels to surround Ainz and Albedo, only for him to cast negative bursts, emitting a dark sphere growing outwards and deleting the existing angels in seconds. With Albedo stepping in, reflecting a holy type attack back at a stray caster, Ainz cast Hellfire, completely disintegrating a bigger airborne enemy. As a last resort, the enemy decides to summon their highest possible angel at their disposal. Ainz is blasted with a holy type spell, only to laugh it off as it deals only minute damage. Seeing that Ainz was injured in the slightest, Albedo begins to freak out as the enemy had hurt her lover. Ainz is able to calm her down, casting Black Hole to erase the summon's existence. Now completely with no options, the enemies truly understand the hopelessness of standing against such a powerful foe. Begging for their lives, Ainz pays no time to it, having warned them before. Afterwards, Ainz officially announces to the Guardians that his name will be henceforth Ainz Ooal Gown. The next day, with Albedo and Shaltir once again fighting in the presence of Ainz, Shaltir informs them of her absence for the next couple of days. We then cut to Ainz, disguised under the alias Momin, entering a guild with an accompanying maid, Nabe in disguise. Easily tossing a cocky adventurer, Ainz ultimately shatters a neighboring adventurer's blue potion. As compensation, he gives said adventurer with a red potion. Heading up to a private room, we see Ainz explains to Nabe the reason for him joining the guild was to learn more about the world. Following the previous adventurer, we see her appraising the red potion, only to find out that the potion is such a high-tier item. Back at the guild, Ainz attempts to accept a dangerous quest, only to be turned down due to his copper level status. Pressing on, Ainz is able to convince fellow adventurers to form a party for said mission. Additionally, he learns of a young genius pharmacist, Nephiria Balayar. Coincidentally, Nephiria interrupts their conversation, requesting Ainz party guard him as he gathers herbs in a nearby forest. Without wasting a moment, they head off. As they begin their trek, Ainz notes that using magic in his disguise is impossible, but is put at ease knowing Nabe is quite a competent caster herself. Cutting back to the Nazarick, we see Demiurge catch Albedo nude, cuddled up with an Ainz body pillow. Back to Ainz, he observes that the fellow party members have quite low technological weapons similar to ones in the Middle Age. As a fellow party member accuses Ainz and Nabe of being lovers, Nabe is flustered as she blurts out that Ainz is for no one but Albedo, only to be held back from revealing additional information. In that moment, ogres begin approaching their positions, asking Ainz to block incoming attacks. Upon the start of the battle, the fellow party members begin attacking the ogres, Ainz and Nabe to walk within inches of the ogres, only to turn all the ogres into corpses within moments. With the help of the adventurers, they are able to eliminate the remaining goblins. Ainz also finds out that material from creatures slain, to be submitted to the guild for rewards, must be done manually. Later that night, the members sit around a campfire, each sharing past memories of past party members and adventures, only for Ainz to leave to move elsewhere to eat and unveil his disguise. Whilst Ainz and Nabe head elsewhere, the adventurers begin admiring Ainz, mentioning he is probably the strongest person they've ever heard of. The morning after heading to a nearby village, Ainz recognizes it as the village he saved. Coincidentally, the genius pharmacist knows the lady Ainz saved and healed, figuring out that Momen the adventurer and Ainz the savior are the same person. Promising to keep his identity a secret, he admits he was at first suspicious of Ainz but retracts any doubts in his character. Finally arriving at the intended forest, they notice that it has clearly been disturbed. With Ainz and Nabe offering to track down the source of the disruption, they stumble upon Aura. Greeting Ainz and Nabe, Aura mentions that a wise king of the forest had made their home in this forest, only for Ainz to ask Aura to help track said king down. Using her various summons, Aura heads off in search. Leading the wise king of the forest, in its place a furry hamster stands in the presence of Ainz. Easily defeating and taming the furball, Ainz introduces it to the other adventurers, noting it would be best to have it as a pet. Arriving back at the guild, Ainz separates from the Nephyria in order to inform the guild of his completed mission. Following the Nephyria, we see he is met by a mysterious lying wait upon his arrival home. Registering his magical creature, we cut back to Nephyria, where the adventurers stand up for him, only for another mysterious cloaked gentleman to enter the scene. Upon Ainz's arrival at Nephyria's home, he notes all the adventurers guarding have been killed. Searching for survivors, and an elderly lady, knowing the genius pharmacist, asks for Ainz's help in saving her. In exchange for all her belongings, Ainz agrees to save Nephyria. Tracking down Nephyria, Ainz also notices a huge swarm of undead approaching the city. Heading out, Nabe and the hamster follow suit. Unable to move swiftly, Nabe is forced to carry said hamster as they make themselves towards the perpetrator. Ainz is forced to summon helpers to help make their way through. Locating the kidnappers, Ainz convinces the crazy lady to follow him while Nabe and the hamster take on the older robed man. Cutting to Ainz, we see him handicap himself as he prepares to face the lady, Mrs. Clementine. Claiming he'll go easy, Ainz dual wields as Clementine lunges towards him. Parrying each other's blades, they separate, only for Ainz to taunt her, mocking her personality and ideals. Enraged at Ainz looking down on her, Clementine in a fit of rage punctures her blade into Ainz's helmet, casting an additional spell as she laughs in joy. Her joy ceases when Ainz begins to speak, changing forms. He has Clementine shaken as he slowly grasps her waist. He pulls her in, slowly tightening his grip around the now trapped Clementine. Eventually she takes her last breath. Cutting to Nabe, we see her cornered by skeletal dragons created by the older summoner. With nothing else under the summoner's sleeve, Nabe reveals her true form as a maid channeling lightning, only to send it in the direction of the summoner and his summons. Wrapping up their battles, Ainz and Nabe find Nephyria in the middle of an altar, returning him home. A few days later, we follow Shaltir as she's stopped in the middle of her forest. Leaving her carriage, she easily defeats and devours the bandits attempting to rob her. Making her way to her destination, she is tasked with capturing the location whilst eliminating all targets. Stopped by a mercenary, Brain Unglaeus. Shaltir is quick to show the skill disparity between the two as she parries off his most powerful slashes with her nails. Fleeing Brain leads Shaltir to others, sacrificing them to save his own life. Having wasted too much time, Shaltir reveals her true form, leaving almost no survivors. Afraid of being scolded by Ainz for leaving survivors, she is distracted when some knights catch her attention. Attempting to kill the caster in the group, she is ultimately caught in a blinding light, rendering her unconscious. Moving to Ainz's perspective, we see he suspects Shaltir as revolting after said incident. Visiting the last known location of Shaltir, he's shocked to see her slumped over with no reaction or awareness of her surroundings. Suspicious of this scenario, he retreats for now. Visiting his treasury, he greets Pandora's actor, the guardian of the treasury, in order to access world items that have the ability to rival the most powerful creatures. Adding to this, he reveals that he intends to fight Shaltir himself, as it seems like the enemies may be using her as bait. Before his fight, he begins casting preemptive spells on himself before approaching Shaltir. Beginning the duel, they both begin throwing spells at each other. Shaltir figures that Ainz's weakness would be holy type spells, and fighting close quarters as a spellcaster, his magical capabilities are the most dangerous, surpassing hers. Ainz, knowing this, is able to corner her with various spells, draining her faster than Ainz. Revealing her trump card, she begins devouring her summons to regenerate wounds and magical power. Waiting for this, Ainz casts the skill, the goal of all life is death, to even the playing field. Having changed forms, Ainz begins to duel Shaltir, not with magic but close quarters, changing his class and wielding different weapons for unpredictable striking patterns, throwing Shaltir off. Buying time, he is able to finally complete a masterful spell, taking the whole duration of the battle to chant. He's finally able to defeat her. Using gold to resurrect Shaltir, Ainz remarks that this was the best possible solution to Shaltir being brainwashed. Ending the anime, Ainz is promoted by the guild to one of the highest ranked adventurers. Thanks for watching. Like, comment and subscribe.